Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast. We're talking about all things good, the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Zach, and we've got a fantastic show today where I got a little treat for Rafe coming through. He doesn't really know what to expect. He was given a hint to prepare, and that's all he's got. So, as always, I'm joined by Rafe. Rafe, how you doing today?
Is that I was given a hint. Okay, that's like saying I can't even. There's not even there's not even a thing that what's it called when you line something up that looks like the other thing. That's not even a real. No, I wasn't given a hint. I just like one word hint. Okay, okay. Well, anyway, hey, thanks for listeners. We are glad you're here. You are the reason we do all this. Hey, we are at Bufnagle at bufnagle.com. Send us a note if you want to, pipe in and let us know what you're thinking out there. If you're new to our podcast, welcome. We're glad you are here. This is going to be something special for you. I tell you, this. If you haven't been here before, this, you know what, you have found your home. All right. So tell a friend to listen. You will get a free episode. Subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and then we will get cookies and brownies, and that's where that will go. Zach, what about now?
Yeah, so I gave you a hint on sometime before I recorded this, and it's like, here's a hint, you get a word, and you get 2 pictures. And then we're not talking necessarily about that thing I gave you a picture of. I will let you inform the audience what that picture was in just a second. But we're expanding on that whole concept that I gave you a picture of. So what was that picture I gave you? What was your hint here this week?
Okay, so the hint looked to me like a picture from one of the Matthew Riley books about the... Is there a name for that series?
Yeah, the Jack West Jr. series.
The Jack West Jr. series. Okay, so it's a series of seven books, and is there right, 7?
7 books, 2 short stories.
Yeah, and how those things always go. There's always some extra things around the periphery that are like warm ups or epilogues or post logs, whatever.
There are 7 published books, novels, definitive novels, and then there are 2 published.
Short stories,
digital short stories.
So, but anyway, he sent me these things, and I could tell it was from the book, and it was a little drawing because these books have drawings and stuff, and it looked kind of like I guess what are they called? A megalith? Okay, a stone formation from ancient peoples. They have left some evidence of themselves there, and that's what it looked like to me. And I said, I think this has something to do with the Druids. And he said, you may be able to use that word when we record. So other than that, no, let me tell you this before we go any further. Okay, let me tell you this. Last week, when this was in my head, I saw a piece of news that the what has been oftentimes considered the Spanish Stonehenge has reemerged after decades beneath the water of a large Spanish reservoir. So the Spanish built this reservoir back whenever they built the reservoir, and they filled it with water. And the drought this summer and over the last couple of years has allowed the water to drop. And now the Dolmen of Guadalperal, a Bronze Age stone monument, has now reappeared above the ground, or above the water. It sits on the ground, and you can go see that now. And it's a bunch of stones kind of put out. It's not quite as grand as the Stonehenge there in Stonehenge land, but there's a thing, and now it's in Spain, and you can go look at it before the water rises again someday, and that gets covered up. Now that's different than Carhenge, which is that thing in Arizona or New Mexico where all those Cadillacs are kind of stacked up on their ends. There was a reference to that.
It's parody. It's art in the best form. It's parody.
It is a parody, and actually, that is actually parodied in the Cars movie when they go traveling around. So,
okay.
All right.
So, Okay. Anyways, I gave you the hint of Stonehenge, and you're like, oh, cool, Druids, and I assumed and I hoped your thought process was, oh, maybe we're talking about the ancient Druids and the people of England. That's an opportunity there. No, actually, what we're going to talk about is what was Stonehenge and what it represented, and then additionally to the one thing that we always forget as humans, especially as we now live in such a technologically advanced area, we can't see a very specific thing that the people of the ancient times could see without much ability and without much thought, and that was the stars. So Stonehenge most likely represented one of two things. It represented the solar equinox, or the other one, the winter equinox. So the solstice, and then
yeah. There you go.
And then the not solstice, the opposite solstice.
Okay, let's make sure we get this right. Okay, so there are 4 very important dates in the solar calendar, the solar annual calendar. There are 2 solstices and 2 equinoxes. There's a summer solstice and a winter solstice, or depending on which hemisphere you're in, that can be reversed, right? And then there's a spring equinox and an autumnal equinox, dates when the day and night are the same length. So because the Earth is tilted, when it's at maximum, when it comes around to a point where the day is either the shortest day of the year or the longest day of the year, depending on which hemisphere you're on, that is one of the solstices, and those happen in late December and in late June. And the equinoxes are in late March and late September, and those are the days when the sun passes either above or below the equator.
Yes. Okay. So you use the word passes, and there's a very interesting thing about Stonehenge. Stonehenge is, for the most part, destroyed, but it is exists, and it is the fundamental groundwork of what it is still there. And what it is like most things that we've realized, is a Roman temple. It's not a Roman temple or a Greek temple. It is a temple. It is a way of showing something about the universe in a space. And the specific thing that they're showing to, that ancient culture was showing, was the fact of something related to the stars and the sun and the planets, about what was coming forward, by the way that, maybe the sun hit a certain pillar in the front. There are temple stones. There are an altar stone at Stonehenge, and that whole architecture was built around this idea of like, we're looking at the sun. The sun is rising over this certain point. That means we have spring coming, which means that we celebrate, a bountiful harvest that's coming in the future, and that shows up throughout, history in so many different places. And the thing we always forget about is the fact that we live in the greatest clock ever created. The problem is we don't get to experience it because we have all this stupid, pollution from, all these buildings lighting up the night sky, that we can't see the stars and the sun in the sky. And we just, talk about like Mercury in retrograde without understanding the fact that the reason Mercury is in retrograde is because of the optical illusion of where we're positioned as Earth when we look at Mercury across the night sky and the stars around that. So it actually looks like it, rotates back on itself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, wow, you threw a lot. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Zach knows things about the stars.
Well, okay. So that's a phenomenal. I guess I want to say discovery, or it's probably observation by ancient peoples to recognize how the Earth functioned. All right. And we've talked a lot about, we've had a couple episodes. Well, we've had some episodes on calendaring before, and how the Julian calendar worked, and how the Gregorian calendar is an improvement of that as far as getting things accurate. And but the simple fact that these guys recognized, and were able to figure out, and I guess they were able to figure out and demonstrate that it was repeatable to the point where they could take gigantic stones and line them up and say, okay, here's what's going to happen. Every year if you stand here and the sun rises right behind that rock, then we are at the point where we have equal days, equal day and night, right? So it's interesting because in order to do that, Zach, you have to be in touch with the astronomical world on a daily basis. You have to go out every night and you have to go look at the stars. Every night you got to go observe where Mars is, all right, or where Saturn is, or all the other whatever planets you're looking at. Right, you have to see where Mercury is relative to the stars, and what you'll see, like right now, Mars is rising. Like when I see it when I take the dog out. Okay, so I take the dog out sometime between 9 o'clock and 11:30, depending on when I go to bed, and I see this. I've seen Mars in the east at about that time, all right, because Mars is rising at that point, but the later I go, the farther it is up. But I know that it's in the east now, and I can watch it. If I could see the stars better, I could watch Mars's position relative to the stars, and I would be able to get some information about that. And we've said this before. That word planet means wanderer in Greek. All right. So the idea that if you sit there, if you live your whole life and watch the stars every night, they just look like this, like they're painted on a glass sphere, and they just move always in the same shape. But the planets move around within them. They move within them. They don't always sit between the same two stars. So the idea that these ancient peoples spent enough time with enough diligence and enough commitment to record this stuff and then build the temples, to me, that's remarkable. I mean,
but they needed to do that. They needed to understand and build something because they didn't have written records for the most part. They didn't have that ability, but they had the ability to create monuments that would tell them about these things, so that when the people who actually were the first ones to discover that passed away, they were at least able to leave the knowledge of like, hey, this temple, this place marks this thing to prepare yourself for what's coming next. It's the same thing when you look at the stars. The reason whatever season we're in now, I believe we're in Libra season, with the way that the stars are positioned around the Earth and the things you see that constellation because of where we are in the calendar.
In the zodiac. Okay, well, see, so this
zodiac is there we go. Yeah.
Well, see, this is what was fascinating to me because I spent some time studying this a while back. And so you can take the night sky, and I mean, it's full of, you can take it. You can't take it. You got to leave it there. Okay, but you can look at the night sky and you can partition it into about 12 different, exactly 12 30-degree sections, okay? Because 30 times 12 is 360 degrees. It takes you all the way around. So you can do that. You can divide it up in that way. And what you do if you're an ancient person looking at that, you may say, okay, here's a glob of stars, and that looks like some kind of goatfish, okay? And this is a big bunch of stars, and that looks like two guys standing there, okay?
Did you say goatfish?
Yeah, Capricorn.
Yeah, what about chickenfish?
Well, we have a chickenfish. It's in storage right now.
It's in the zodiac, though.
No, the chickenfish is not. Okay. Side note.
Rafe, anyways, we'll get that. Okay. The zodiac of animals, made of animals.
We have this piece of decorative art in our house, and it's the tail of a fish and the head of a chicken. We call it the chickenfish. I don't know if it's a real thing. I've looked to see if it's I don't know. It was just at the store. I thought it was awesome, so we got the chickenfish. And you know what, Zach? Some people come over and they get really freaked out by the chickenfish. They're like, "What is that thing?" Like, it's a chickenfish, and some people think it's great, and other people get freaked out. But anyway, okay, so you can divide it into these 30-degree sections, okay? And what you notice is that different sections are visible at night during different times of the year because the Earth is in a different place going around the sun, okay? But what's really fascinating to me, because I thought that, for example, I was born under Capricorn, which means that the season, the astronomical season, or what's that called? Astrology. The astrological season that I was born in was Capricorn. But what that means is if you're standing on Earth here and if you could blot out the sun, then you would see Capricorn behind the sun, right? So when the sun is when the Earth is in a position such that the sun is in Capricorn, that's the season of Capricorn, which to me was stunning. Because it means that these guys, all these astrology guys, understood that the stars were still shining, even when the sun, it's just that we couldn't see them. Okay.
Well,
So they would see them.
that gets into a thing completely different, though. Is before Galileo, the model of the Earth was that the sun was going around the Earth. So then you get into some other complicated things going on too, which
Right.
we talk about with when planets are in retrograde. But that's a completely different point. But it's important to understand they created a model that was able to fit what they saw. They weren't dumb.
Right. Right.
They created a model based on what they saw. It's the same thing when you interact with kids. Kids create models based on how they view and process life. And then it's like, okay, cool. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't, and you have to teach them.
Well, and that's the thing about, because I talk a lot about when I teach my little stats classes about models and what they are. Okay. And models are I guess they're descriptions that do two things. They describe what you have seen and they help you predict what you're going to see. Any kind of model should do that. All right. So it describes, so you can say, well, when the sun, I almost said hatches, when the sun rises behind that rock, right, in the springtime, then we know that, that spring is here. Okay. And then it'll continue south and then it'll come back. And when it crosses that, then we have autumn and we're okay. So we know that, right? But then it allows you to describe that, but then also predict things like, the sun is rising there. That means that those migratory herds that we like to hunt are going to be coming to the valley. We better pack up your stuff. Let's go there and be ready to feast on whatever we're going to feast on. Or it's time to harvest the grain. Or it's time to move your village out of the floodplain so you don't get hit by the flood. So those are the models, and they had we've talked about this. They had a geocentric model. I'm sorry. Yeah, geocentric model where the Earth was at the center and things went around the outside. And that's perfectly good. It doesn't really fit well with things like understanding gravity and Newtonian physics. And once you get that, you have to have this.
But Newton wasn't around yet to invent gravity, so what's the point?
I hear you, and I'm all in favor of that. And it just took us a long time to get our heads around that concept that we are sitting on a thing that's spinning really, really fast, although it appears like we are sitting perfectly still.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing we don't understand is that's why there are these megalith structures across the planet. It's consistent across the board. It's because every civilization realized we need to do something to understand this, and this is the best we've got. So they move on, they move through. Eventually, yeah, there were some civilizations. The Druid civilization is probably the best example of this, of them being very dedicated temple spaces, because there is a altar stone at Stonehenge. It's the way those things are created. And it's the same thing we talk about our understanding of astrology, not astrology, right?
Astrology is the made up science. Astronomy is the real science.
Okay, astronomy gets confused with astrology, and then therefore we don't even just bother to learn it when we should be learning it and understanding the fact that why is a planet in retrograde? It's because our ellipse around the sun is faster than another planet's ellipse around the sun. So therefore we get caught up and we create this cool optical illusion where it looks like the planet is going backwards, but it's because it's relative where the stars is positioned. It's like when you talked about with the Wanderer, about how the planets and the stars, and it's beautifully shaped. We live in the most impressive clock in the world, in the galaxy, and we just make little bad assumptions related to astronomy about it, and it's just like we can do better. So do better astrology and do better astronomy. Do better of them both.
Well, and that's the thing. Okay, so when you talk about movement, okay, so we talk about it looks like the planet's moving backwards. Well, it's moving backwards over the course of like weeks, right? I mean, you have to go out and you have to do this every night, and you got to go back and you got to imagine before they had artificial light. If they had a fire, right? And they had so you're sitting around the fire and you're like, well, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. Other people sit there and you look. What are you going to do? You're going to look at the stars. You're not going to watch, you're not going to binge Netflix or, binge Bufnagle podcasts. Well, you could actually do that. You could binge the podcast and look at the stars if you wanted. So yeah, we'll have to do that. So, but if you're there doing it, you will recognize that. And I think eventually, it comes out of the way, Zach, that they were like, if I sit, I've noticed every morning when I get up, if I get up before the sunrise, I'm sitting right here, but every day I see the sun moving a little bit. It's not rising in the same place every day. And it doesn't take long for you to realize, okay, I'm going to start tracking that. But to get that right over years, I mean, because it takes you a full year to see a cycle. And then the next year, like, well, I think I saw this last year. You're going to have some sort of primitive storytelling or writing, or you can write, okay, here's what I did. Okay. Hey, Chief Zog, here's what I did is I took this every day when the sun came up, I put a rock along that line to show where the sun came up. And look, over the course of a week, I have 7 different rocks in 7 different places. But you know what? And then it started coming back, so it took them a long time to figure out how to make this thing work, but they got it. And now we got it too.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best way you can do to understand that is if you drive the same route in the morning, to school or to work or whatever it may be, the sun eventually at some point is going to be right in your face. At some point, it might be over to your left and it's not in your face. You don't have to worry about your sunglasses that day. Understand and realize the fact that, like, it's because we live in the coolest clock ever created. Like, appreciate that. Understand that. It's the same thing with the moon. When you look at the moon, I don't know if I do this a lot because I think the moon is infinitely more fascinating than the sun, but that's a completely unrelated.
Well, wait. It's hard to look at the sun, right? I mean,
well, yeah.
Do you remember when you were a kid and they said don't stare at the sun? And you're like, I can't stare at the sun. My eyes, like, I start crying and I can't. It's like, how does somebody stare at the sun? I don't even get that.
Anyways, the moon. You have the 8 stages of the moon. You have the wanings, you have the waxings, and then you have each stages as it goes up and becomes a big bright full moon, and it becomes a dark unilluminated new moon. There's that whole cycle there. But additionally, if you look and you pay enough attention to the moon, each crescent is not the same. The crescent that you get, the waning crescent that you get in October is going to be different than the waning crescent you get in September. Not position in the sky, but the way it's illuminated. It will be that quarter moon illumination that we're used to, but it might be like, it starts in a different position. It's not completely.
Well, its orbit is these orbits aren't circles. There are times when the moon is closer. There's times when the moon's farther away. And people talk about they have these names for these full moons, right? It's the blood moon, or it's the harvest moon, or it's a blue moon. Blue moon. The blue moon is the second.
The second full moon in the same month.
Yeah. So so these things are out there. But I think you're right, Zach. What's fascinating is these guys took the time and the effort and the energy, and they had the diligence and the curiosity to record this stuff. And they might have recorded it with a pile of stones, but at the time, I'm sure at the time when people were living there, Daddy, why are those stones there? He's like, well, here's what happens. And they kind of explain the sun and how it comes up and moves in different places. And you don't really need to know why that's happening, but you have to know that it does. Right? Now, you said these things happen all over the world, right? I mean, so
there are megalith things in Mongolia and in Spain and Wales and
Australia.
No, probably not, because Australia didn't get inhabited until England decided to just put all their prisoners there.
No, that's not true. There were Aborigines there doing all sorts of Aboriginal stuff.
That's also true.
But they didn't have a pole star.
Yeah.
And that's not their fault.
Italy, Wales, Morocco, Russia, France, America, a couple places in North America. They all had some type of megalith structure. Yes, it was heavily focused, and this is why we talk about Stonehenge a lot. Stonehenge is the biggest one in the area that shows up in the most, and specifically the UK, the English Isles. There's ones in Wales, there's ones in Scotland, there's some in the UK. Stonehenge, perfect example of that. All of those things come up, and that's the big one. And Stonehenge is the most famous one. It's the biggest one. It's the one that has the altar stone. It has all these other things going for it. So we always talk about it, but we forget about the fact that, there's the ones in Spain, there's the ones in Mongolia, there's Italy, there's Russia, there's all these other ones. And they all represent a different thing. They're not there for some random reason. The people put them there because they help them show something about life. So
now some of those, though, aren't necessarily stone things. Sometimes it's a road that could run straight, due east-west, connecting.
Well, I'm just talking very specifically megaliths. Megaliths are very specifically considered those stone structures.
but a lot of those peoples built their cities or their temp like I don't remember some of the South American ones. They are lined up east west. The main drag down the city with the big temple is there. That's lined up straight um, on that pathway that the sun rises over. Like if you sit in the king's throne tomb, then
Right.
then the temple is right there where the sun rises. So these things are all lined up.
There's I don't know if this is true or not. I don't think it
Okay,
is.
go ahead.
But there's always the reference about the Washington Monument and the way on a certain day when the sun is able to hit the peak represents something in American history. There's that rumor that you always hear floats around. You know the one I'm talking about, I believe, right?
Yeah, I've heard of things like that. But that's what I wanted to
You know
do.
what? It's fun. Yeah, it's based on Egypt, which is based on Greek. So we're just a Greek society. That's a different point.
Well, but you're right. I think there are things you can set up, and I've known, like, if you have. It's funny. I take a little walk around the neighborhood, and somebody has out in front a little decorative hourglass, or not hourglass, a sundial. Okay, and it's really funny to me because the sundial has there's a name for that thing that points is supposed to point at the North Star. I think it's called a plenin or something like that.
I do
It's
not know.
you know who knows it? Bob knows it. I think but it's the thing you point right at the star, and when you do, when the sun comes across, it will put the shadow of that on different lines on the inside of the curve, and it's really funny to me because they have this beautiful decorative sundial there in their front yard, and it's completely pointed the wrong way. And I'm thinking, this thing actually functions. Is what I want to tell them. I want to tell them, if you would point this at the North Star, you could tell what time it is by the shadow. It's not just a for pretty thing. When we were in Brentwood, Zach, do you remember that outside the library there was a sundial? Okay, this is kind of clever. I mean, it's clever enough, right? And if you stand right on the point where it says stand here, if you stand there are two arcs around that sundial that use your shadow to tell what time of day it is, right? And one arc is for standard time, and one arc is for daylight time, depending on, of course, what time of the year it is. And of course, they're only off by an hour. But you can build those things very simply. I mean, in fact, when I was a kid, when I was in Boy Scouts, they were like, okay, so if you're lost and you have no idea which direction anything is, you can take a stick, right, and you stick it in the ground and point it right at the sun, okay, and then sit there and just wait a little bit, and that shadow will, when you point it right at the sun, there will be no shadow. But as the sun moves, you will get a little shadow, and that shadow will point east, right?
Couldn't
Because
you
the
also
sun.
just wait for the sun to set and then the opposite direction is east?
Well, you could do that. But maybe you're in a hurry. Maybe maybe there's donuts at lunch or something, and you want to make sure you're there, and it's a morning hike. All right, you need to know how you're going to get around. But those little things are there, and there are ways to tell all these things about the planet, about this great clock that we live in, this great calendar clock, mechanical machine that is our solar system. It's there for the taking, and the ancients knew it, and we are the most technologically advanced civilization on the planet, and we have people that have no idea that any of this is out there. And, well, you know what? People should do that. They should go find out.
Yeah, go explore the beauty of nature and what we have available to us. Yeah, we have all this technology. Technology is awesome. Technology allows you to order Chick-fil-A on your phone and it shows up at your house. You love that because that means that you don't have to cook. But also understand and appreciate the people who lived before us 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago weren't stupid. They did things for a reason. Stop discrediting them. Understand what they did well. Take what you can, make it better, and improve your life. It's the whole thing. It's what can I learn from this person? What can I learn from this thing so that it can benefit my life, and then I can go make other people's lives better. It's the same thing. Understanding astrology, understanding astronomy, both of those things is important because it can allow you a fuller picture of your own humanity to better impact and positively impact people around you.
I I told you last week that my Twitter feed is full of is like one of the happiest Twitter feeds on the planet because it's full of just like accounts follow that show me like pretty wildflowers or beautiful architecture from from ancient times or happy sayings and cat posters and that kind of stuff. And it is amazing to me how the ancients built beautiful things when it was hard. And now we are living in an era where we could do anything and we decide to do what we do. I guess I'm just going to challenge everybody out there to do something beautiful, to build beautiful things, all right? Or to learn beautiful things. These guys knew this stuff. And we have this biased view of the world because we live now. And the idea that we are the most intelligent now because we have whatever. Well, yeah, we're living on their shoulders. There's no question about that. But they did some really awesome things, Zach. Really incredibly awesome things. And I'm starting to think, I wonder if we really progressed at all from them. A lot of the stuff we're doing is just kind of stupid. So they had good stuff. You ought to do what they're doing. Okay, I'm gonna say this though. I just thought of this today. There's 365 days in a year. So how many years does it take to get you a million days?
365, a million divided by 365?
Exactly. Thank you. You win the algebra prize. All right. It's 2,739 days or years. 2,739 years will give you we'll give you a million days, 365. Okay. Now, okay. We can go into the whole Gregorian leap year, all that kind of junk. Okay. But it's about 2,700 years. All right. And right now we're in 2022. And so like, we're talking like 700 BC, give or take, about 700. So that was like, what? That was Isaiah was writing stuff. The early Greek republics were 700 BC. I mean, 700 BC is a long time ago, right? And it was like most of the stuff, other than the Egyptians and the pre-Egyptian folks, we don't have much material from that far back. So it's been about a million days. We have about a million days of really good history, right? Going back from the early Greeks to the present day. And to me, I thought a million days would either be a lot shorter or a lot longer. But it's like the perfect amount of time, like a million days. Maybe that should be a book. It should be called A Million Days.
Well, maybe you should write it.
All right, I'm starting right now. I know the title.
All right, halfway there.
The hard part's done. Hey, you want to co-author with me? Because we get the whole cover of the book done by the time we're done with the podcast. Zach, I think you're right. The ancients, and we've all said this, the ancients were certainly not stupid. They didn't have the technology, and there's some things they didn't understand. But man, based upon what they had, my hat is off to those guys. So go out and explore. Go see these fun things. Go see that Spanish.
Appreciate what was there before you, and don't just see it as like, why do I need this? Understand this, like people were doing things to help make their lives easier. Can help make your life easier, and that's a good way to positively impact people, if you ask me. That's all I got. I want to thank you all for listening. I want to remind you to go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.